We are so excited to welcome Lena Oeun to our episode today. She is 21 years old, has been investing in real estate since she was only 18 years old. She dropped out of college to work as a real estate agent and invested all of her money into short-term rental arbitrage. She is a full-time content creator, generates $8,000 a month with her investments, all without owning a single asset.
Even if you are given a blueprint on how to make $1 million, if everyone around you tells you that you'll fail or that what you're doing is not the correct route, you'll be convinced at some point, unless you have a strong why, unless you have the right people surrounding you that supports your vision or they are who you want to be in the future.
Let's dive into what she can teach us about investing at such a young age.
Welcome to the show. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you invest and then also tell us a little bit more about your current portfolio?
Yeah, sure. So I actually got into Airbnb Arbitrage when I was 19 years old. Airbnb Arbitrage is when you rent out a place, whether it's an apartment or single family home, and you act as the tenant. And with giving permission by the landowner or apartment, you sublease it onto Airbnb. And you can either operate as a short-term rental, mid-term rental, or even long-term rental. There's a lot of people that do arbitrage even with long-term rental. For me, I primarily target mid-term rental and filling in the vacancies with short-term rental.
Very interesting. Okay, I think that actually goes really well into our first segment. It's called That Feeling When, or TFW. You started investing really young, younger than I did, and I started at 22, and made a really big decision to leave college to pursue this. And so most kids are partying, most kids are doing whatever in college. What, I guess, brought you to real estate, and what convinced you that this was actually going to be a full-time job?
I was a YouTube university kid, okay? So I just went on YouTube and I searched up how to make six figures, how to make this much amount, different side hustles. And then, holy grail, I found Graham Stephan. That's when I just wrote down exactly what Graham did. So he said, hey, I didn't attend college. I went straight to being a realtor. So I was like, you know what? I'll also be a realtor, because I knew that even if I were to drop out of college, that I can always go back. I mean, there is a 3-year program, right? I went to my parents. I was like, hey, I want to drop out. I want to be a realtor, and I just want to sell and make commission. And worst case, mom, if I don't do well, I'll just attend college and I'll graduate the same time as everyone else, as long as I take the 3-year accelerated program in finance. And that was the major I would have went for if I didn't go for real estate. How did I know that real estate investing was for me? Is that I know that it's my gateway towards generational wealth. This is a game that I want to play, and I want to be the best at it.
You nailed it when you said you're a YouTube graduate, because there's so much free information out there that at someone's disposal, that it's like, you can you can create really your own roadmap and be so successful. So thank you for that. That's a very inspiring story on how you got started. I want to jump to our next segment, sus, canceled, and trending, to talk about more present-day scenarios. We're going to talk about what is working for you currently, what is absolutely not, and what is trending or up and coming.
Let's start with sus, which is short for suspicious. What are you just not sure about in this market? As you know, the market is changing quickly. It's not the same as it was last year. It'll continue to change in the next year. And so I guess looking at the market today, what are you just not sure will work in the future months?
This is so contradicting against what I do, but I would say investing into short-term rental arbitrage as your main business model.
Tell us a little bit more about that. Does that mean that you're shifting your business away from it, or are you just diversifying within your business?
For example, when I invested into Charlotte short-term rental with a single family home, the neighborhood that I acquired this unit in, although I had full transparency with the landowner on how I was going to operate it, I operated a short-term rental during the winter. During the winter is when short-term rental rates are at its lowest, which is when you invite the lowest quality guests. That's number one. That's one thing that I'll have to keep a note of right there. Number two is that in this neighborhood that I invested into, they've never had a business operation there before. People live there for 10, 20 years. They've never dealt with someone operating like short-term rental housing, you know? So those two things would be like a pretty big thing that most people don't talk about, you know? Because I had lower quality guests and I had guests check in like minimum 2 nights. There's always some type of conflicts where they're being too loud, or they probably block the roads, or they even throw parties, you know? And that is something that you can't prevent, especially during winter, because the market rate is at its lowest when you operate short-term rentals, okay? After 3 months of operating short-term rental, I felt like this is something that I cannot operate. There's no way to operate a short-term rental arbitrage unit without disrupting the community. And on top of that, because there are so much turnovers, that these guests are more likely to mess with the house, you know? If they're only there for a few days, they're not going to care about the condition of the home that they left it in. So going into 2022, I decided to change my strategy and then convert all my units into midterm rentals where it's 30 nights minimum. And by doing that, I was able to have guests who are booking for work purposes, anywhere between 2 guests up to 6 guests. And even with a large group of like 6 people, which isn't that large, these are people who are traveling nurses. They're very kind to the community. And honestly, they're only there to sleep, because a lot of times they work their 12-hour shifts. And it's a lot more affordable for these traveling professionals to travel in groups, because they only need to spend anywhere between, let's say, $800 up to maybe $1,200 for rents per person. And it's a furnished place where they don't need to pay for utilities or for internet. So I just love working with midterm rental guests because, number one, there's less turnovers. Number two, the longer that they're in that property, the more that they're willing to take care of the property as if it's their own home. Number three, they don't disrupt the community, and they don't bring any other guests because these aren't local people. These are people who are traveling from other cities, so they're only traveling within their work group. When I do fill in the occupancy rate with short-term rental, I do a minimum of 3 nights as well, and I do keep it at a pretty high rate at the same time. I'm willing to lose a bit of profit just to make sure that the community isn't being disrupted and that I have a guest that is going to take care of my property.
I found the same thing. As I have 2 short-term rentals and 2 midterm rentals, and I would say that the guests tend to be a lot more respectful in the midterm rental space and less disruptive to the neighborhood. So that makes a lot of sense. Going on to the next one is canceled. So what strategy you might have done in the past? I guess maybe you've answered this, maybe it's still Airbnb, but what would you just cancel out of your business and not touch anymore?
Avoiding using credit cards for my full investment.
Oh, interesting.
Especially with like personal credit cards. Because I went to like $40,000 in debt for my arbitrage unit and in personal credit cards.
You know, it's funny because we always talk about different investing strategies. This is a huge tip for anyone investing, is do not over leverage. That's a good tip.
We haven't gotten that one before. I would say I did the same thing for my first renovation. I paid for the renovation with a 0% APR credit card. It was only $15,000 and I was going to refinance it in 6 months, but it hit my credit like 100 points and it took me months to rebuild it. So
me too.
Good tip.
That's a good tip. Good tip.
And this wouldn't be a party without some party favors. And our party favor today is some really great advice from Lena. So Lena, what is one piece of advice that you'd like to leave with our audience?
When I was younger, I actually was lucky enough to be able to block all of the noise out of my head. And every single week, I would attend open house and meet up with realtors who were ambitious as me. I would attend these investment group meetings every end of the month as well, because I knew that everyone in that room would be people that I actually want to talk to or people that I look up to and want to be in the future. So even if you are given a blueprint on how to make $1 million, if everyone around you tells you that you'll fail or that what you're doing is not the correct route, you'll be convinced at some point, unless you have a strong why, unless you have the right people surrounding you that supports your vision, or they are who you want to be in the future.
It has been such a pleasure having you with us, Lena. Tell the audience where they can find you.
You could find me at Lena Oeun, LenaOeun, on IG or TikTok.
It has been such a pleasure. Until next time, make sure to subscribe to this channel. It is Soli and Leka. Peace and out.
Bye, guys.